Abd el Kader, born on September 6, 1808, was an Algerian religious leader who faced the French occupation of Algeria for years in the early decades of the 19th century. He was a Muslim, a follower of Sufism, also known as Tasawwuf, a body of Islam that consisted of ritualism, asceticism, and esoteric spirituality. For many years, he unified the Algerian tribes to fight against the French occupation when the Foreign Legion settled in Sidi Bel Abbes. According to the book The French Foreign Legion, whose author wrote about the Foreign Legion for decades of his life, in December 1832, there were 3,182 legionnaires in Mustafa, Algeria. 87 were French, who achieved rapid promotion, 94 Swiss, 571 Italians, 98 Belgians and Dutch, 85 Poles, and the rest were Germans, of the most diverse origins: deserters, criminals, political refugees, adventurers. El Kader's persistent concerns for what we know about piety, with which he treated his Christian opponents, earned him many admirers. Some French authors referred him as a modern Yugurta, who was a king of Numidia, present-day Algeria, who in Roman times fought against the Roman occupation. Peter II of Brazil met Kader in one of his trips. Abd el Kader means the servant who can do everything. Kader was born in El Gitna or Gitena. His father, Muhyiddin, was affiliated with Tariqa, which would be an Islamic school linked to mysticism. In the community Oued al-Hammam, Kader, as a teenager, received education there, where he studied grammar, jurisprudence, and theology. The French occupation of Algeria began in 1830, initially in Oran. Muhyiddin, Kader's father, declared jihad, and then father and son began their first attacks against this occupation. Their fighting style was guerrilla warfare, and they usually attacked legionary groups patrolling the desert. A battle that exemplifies this well was Maison Carré, which is now a suburb in Algiers, the Algerian capital. There is no evidence in the book or articles that this battle was commanded by Abd el Kader, but rather by the Ouifa tribe. However, I think it's important to describe it here. On May 23, 1832, a detachment of 27 legionnaires and 25 chasseurs d'Afrique, which was a light cavalry commanded by Major Solomon Muses, were attacked by surprise by the Algerians and were completely outflanked. Solomon retreated with the cavalry to seek reinforcements, and command remained with Jean, a Swiss lieutenant. Due to the numerical difference, they made a serious strategic error. They broke formation and ran into a small nearby forest. Instead of firing in coordinated volleys, noting that at that time they used flintlock muskets, which fired only once, having to pound the gunpowder and capsule packet in the bottom of the barrel, known as paper cartridge. A shooter with practice could fire a shot every 30 seconds. Almost everyone was killed. Some captured were taken prisoner and had to make the choice between accepting Islam or dying. Only a Saxon legionnaire named Wagner accepted the proposal, and in his new camp he found 5 deserters who were killed a few days later when trying to escape to Algiers. Wagner managed to escape 13 days later, where he later reported what he saw in the barracks. Major Muses was transferred to a light infantry battalion and died in 1836 in an Arab ambush. The Ouifa tribe offered sanctuary to any legionnaire who deserted. On April 7, 1832, a legionnaire named Miller accepted the proposal of 2 Bedouins to convert to the cause. They were taken to the Algerian camp, and there they replaced their uniforms with Arab clothing. However, Miller changed his mind, and at some point when they were outside the camp, he knocked an Arab off a mule and returned to the Legion barracks. The Legion then ambushed the camp. The Arabs abandoned, leaving 70 dead behind. The legionnaires were rewarded with 10,000 francs. The Arabs generally avoided direct conflict, preferring to attack patrolling platoons by surprise, seeking to separate the detachments, breaking formation, starting by killing whoever was close to the light artillery piece, seeking to win by exhaustion. In the fall of 1832, Kader assumed leadership after his father argued that he was too old. The appointment was made in the Mosque of Mascara. Within a year, Kader united many tribes, exercising influence throughout the province of Oran. The commander of the region, Louis Desmichels, made peace negotiations through a treaty which ceded control of almost the entire region of Oran to Kader. Desmichels was replaced by Camille Trezel, who resumed hostilities. Until June 28, 1835, he suffered a crushing defeat at the Battle of Macta. 3 companies of the 4th Battalion, composed of Poles and the 5th of Italians, under the orders of Lieutenant Joseph Conrad, commanded by Trezel, marched towards the base of Kader, east of Oran, where he was preaching resistance among the tribes. At 5 a.m. on June 26, Trezel organized the columns. The 4th Battalion was close to a convoy with the chasseurs and some artillery pieces. On the left flank, the 5th Battalion with a cavalry squadron headed for an area in the hills called Moulay Ismail. As the battalions advanced, Arab snipers emerged from the hills, frustrating the initial strategy. The 4th Battalion was surrounded by the hills and forced to retreat. The chasseurs had their colonel killed while trying to protect the convoys. The bugler, who served as guidance on the battlefield, sound to retreat, while the 5th Battalion and the 66th Regiment flanked the Arabs. Around noon, Trezel's troops left the area. There were 2 convoys on the plain that were badly damaged and had to be burned. They were left with only the tents to accommodate the wounded, leaving 52 dead behind. June 27, Trezel decided to camp in Sig, where he unsuccessfully tried to negotiate with Kader. The following day, June 28, they were at a point on the road between the Moulay Ismail Hills and Makta marshes, from where the Arabs followed him through these 2 flanks, and at 2 p.m. from both directions, the 4th Battalion again ended up being separated from the convoy, and the 5th Battalion, commanded by Lieutenant Conrad, attacked the Arabs on the right flank in the Makta marshes. But this attempt was a disaster, and the legionnaires quickly suffered many casualties. The Arabs had set fire to some vegetation. With the direction of the wind, the smoke worsened the visibility of the legionnaires. Conrad was forced to call the reserve that was protecting the wounded in the tents. They managed to retreat behind a hill. Soon after Trezel retreated together with Conrad, the Arabs had captured the convoys. The commander of the 66th was dead, so Trezel reorganized with accurate shooters, artillery and cavalry. They managed to reach the convoys. The Arabs decided to stop the attack. When they reached the Mediterranean coast, Oran, a ship picked up the legionnaires. Another contingent with cavalry and help from some allied tribes returned to the barracks with 300 wounded, 280 missing and 60 dead. Among the survivors was Akil Bazaine, who would become commander in the Franco-Prussian War. For some time, this defeat undermined the legionnaire morale. In April 1837, Thomas Bugeaud was the new commander-in-chief of the French colonies. He was ordered to neutralize all attempts of peace by Kader. In a treaty that same year, he further increased Kader's territories, but he had to recognize the French Empire as sovereign. This was the flag of the Emirate of Kader. He and his advisors built factories in Tagdent. The city was declared the capital. There were gunpowder and weapons factories. The Emirate regulated stores promoting security for traders, even minting national coins. The Emirate of Kader suppressed abusive taxes to improve conditions of the fellah. The peasants had an official uniform, artillery, cavalry and infantry, with bayonets, muskets and flintlock pistols. There was payment, a hierarchy and an organized diet. Kader tried his best to store books, buying, copying and transporting them to the Tagdent fortress. There was a large library where everyone could access it, students, peasants, and soldiers. Copies of these books were sent to schools, and some of these books and manuscripts were captured by the French during the Battle of Ismailia. The emir paid teachers according to their qualifications, and his emirate built many schools. During the fall of his emirate, many of these manuscripts were taken to the castle of Chantilly in France, where some of them have been analyzed since 2022. Several times refused the Ottoman title of Sultan, preferring to be recognized as a spiritual leader, creating a theocratic state during his period. The legionnaire contingents were weakened, and in Kader's hometown, Gitena, legionnaires suffered another terrible defeat. They lost their convoys and many perished on the battlefield and hospitals. By the end of 1838, Kader had extended his domains among the Kabila tribes, south of Biskra, and on the border with Morocco. Although Kader offered sanctuary to deserted legionnaires, his subordinates did not always share the same idea. According to the author, if a legionnaire managed to reach the emir with his head on his shoulders, he would have a chance of being admitted. The French Magnus Garcin, who acted as an advisor, reported that most of the deserters were Italians and Germans who arrived confident in offering their services to the emir, but a few days later they would bitterly regret it. Some of them wandering from tribe to tribe, others trying to escape to Tunis or other nearby cities. Most of these died horribly. Saint Arnaud asked an Italian deserter who returned after 6 months with Kader, reporting that the emir did not pay or feed the legionnaires, but he had an army and that the captain was from artillery. There was a Herculean legionnaire named Moncel, who used to steal and intimidate his colleagues. He had been punished by his superiors for murdering wounded in combat. He deserted. He conspired to drag these same people into an ambush. A few survived. He drew with a knife on the chest of the one who had punished him. November 2, Moncel. Sometime later, Kader handed him over the French authorities, and he was executed. In 1840, Lieutenant General Scrum reported successes, such as in the pass between the Mosiah Mountains in May, in the city of Miliena, when they defended themselves from a siege of hundreds of Arabs. The 3rd Light Regiment of the Artillery Squadron through a brutal Sahara summer that reached 48 degrees. Many legionnaires succumbed to diseases from drinking unsuitable waters. Some had the idea of using their dead comrades as puppets in the windows to appear being in greater numbers, something that probably inspired the director who wrote Bugest. When General Nicolas Changarnier, with his column, repelled the attack, 600 from 1,200 had survived. Only 150 were fit to fight, among them Akil Bazaine. Meanwhile, Kader recruited Jews and Christians, putting them to work in arsenals, warehouses and depots, and selling these goods to England. At that time, Leon Grotius, a representative from the French government, was a key player in the peace negotiations. He was highly respected among the Arab chiefs. Kader had a frugal lifestyle. He lived in a tent and taught concepts of independence and nationalism. 1840, Bugeaud was over 50 years old. He had a firm gaze and a Roman nose. He was described as energetic and looking younger than his age. He would become a serious threat to Kader. He spoke in the same jargon as the legionnaires. He was responsible for changing the legionnaire fighting style, abolishing the heavy convoys that slowed down the infantry. He applied the same strategies against the Spanish guerrillas in the Carlist War, eliminating artillery, which caused strangeness at first but proved effective, making the columns highly mobile. A few days after this adaptation, Bugeaud began an offensive against Kader near the Sikak River. He coordinated a false attack by returning to a higher part in a V formation as the Arabs attacked in the vanguard and from behind. In short-range combat, Bugeaud used something that he had learned in Spain: grape shot, cutting the ammo in a cross, and when fired, the fragments dispersed similar to shotgun ammo. Advancing as one, the French army surrendered many Algerian prisoners of war. Scorched earth was also used by Bugeaud, consisting of burning plantations and capturing enemies' food stores. Another strategy introduced by Bugeaud was small fortifications in coastal cities made of oaks brought from France. They resisted musket fire, and there was a dike around these structures with parapet, with 2 cannons each and full of grenades in the garrison. As reported by the legionnaire Lambert in May 1841 near Algiers, Lambert heard some shots and went to the rescue of a company in trouble. When they arrived, it was too late. The bodies were side by side by the tracks. It was clear that it had been a horrendous fight. Only one legionnaire managed to escape alive. When hit, he had remained hidden behind a bush. Despite these changes have saved the legion, Bugeaud used to say that the legion had to be abolished, but the legion had become a necessary evil for France, in which they had where to send refugees, outcasts, and marginalized. The 66th Regiment, for example, was composed of a former guard who had refused to serve in the July Revolution. From 1841, Kader gradually lost territory and was forced to retreat into the interior of Oran. He went to Morocco almost at the same time that the French army defeated the Moroccans in the Battle of Isly. In 1845, it was the ultimatum, the final battle of Kader against the French in the small town of Sidi Ibrahim, near the border of Morocco. September 22, the troops of Lieutenant Colonel Lucien Montagnac were taken by surprise and ended up being surrounded in a mosque after 3 days of siege, without water or food, having to cut the ammo in 4 to spare. A captain was captured. Kader tried to make him surrender, but the captain shouted for them to fight to the death, so he was decapitated. Montagnac was also killed when he attempted a suicidal bayonet charge with the remaining survivors. This battle had legendary repercussions among the French, and the expression Faire Sidi Ibrahim among the chasseurs d'Afrique was used in World War I. After the treaty in Tangiers was signed between Morocco and France, Sultan Abdul al-Rahman simply turned his back on Kader and began to consider him an enemy. Moulay Hashim, Rahman's grandson, was sent with an army to kill Kader. However, in July 1847, Kader's troops repelled this attack and counterattacked the Moroccan camp. Hashim managed to escape with his life, but the commander was killed. In December 1847, the Alawites again tried to eliminate Kader. This time, Mulay Muhammad and Soliman, Rahman's sons, were coming with a large army. Kader had been informed, and in the night of December 11, they surprised the Moroccan camp and attacked them so unexpectedly that they retreated. There is a source in the article mentioning that Kader had covered 2 camels with blankets and some kind of grass and set fire on them and make them advance in direction of the Moroccan camp. On December 23, 1847, Kader went to General Lamoricière to surrender, with the condition that he could stay in Alexandria or Cairo. However, Kader and his family were sent to Fort Lomog in Toulon, France. This news quickly spread, and the journalist Émile Girardin, the writer Victor Hugo, and many other influential people appealed to Napoleon III for Kader's freedom, who in October 1847 was released. 1852 freed him and his family. He went to live in Damascus in Syria, where he dedicated himself to philosophy and theology and began to write manuscripts. He even wrote a book about horses. He made friends with the Grand Orient Freemasonry, befriended the aristocrat Jane Digby, and the explorers Richard and Isabella Burton. In July 1860, a civil war broke out between the Maronite Christians and Druses. Kader and his sons went to the streets to shelter Christian families. A newspaper of the time reported that he and about 40 followers rescued many people. The French government increased Kader's pension to 150,000 francs. He received several honors, such as the Grand Orient Star of Magnificence and one from the 9th Pope of Vatican. President Lincoln presented him with 2 revolvers. In 1865, he visited Paris at the invitation of Napoleon III. Kader died in Damascus in 1883. In 1965, his body was brought to the El Alia cemetery in Algeria.